Do me a favor, grab your coffees, grab your teas, grab your nanas, your tatas, your tios, your tias, your friends, and don't forget those pens. You might want to take notes today. As you guys know, we're having two special guests today, and it's brother Ricky Lopez and his beautiful wife. She's beautiful, y'all. Vicky Lopez. You shared. Thank you. Yes, please share out there to all the outlets. So with that being said, let's welcome our wonderful brother, Ricky Lopez, and his beautiful wife, Victoria Lopez. Hi, good afternoon, y'all.
God bless you.
Hi, guys.
We're really excited. We are so excited to have you guys here, and we want to talk about, your book, Minutes with God. But before we do, can you tell our virtual viewers, a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Ricky Lopez. This is my wife, Victoria.
Hello.
And I run an evangelist social media page, I like to say. I'm a book author. I'm a husband. And we have 3 wonderful kids. And, we didn't always, I guess, know the Lord in the conventional way. I personally didn't know the Lord in the conventional way. I should say maybe my wife did. She had a head start. She's a pastor's daughter. And so she grew up in a really decent home. She went off to Bible college and learned some things. And
oh my goodness. And how about yourself, Victoria? Is there anything that you can let the virtual viewers also know a little bit, about yourself?
So like you said, I am a pastor's kid. I was raised my entire life in church, and under my parents. They weren't always pastors. They were. It was probably about my preteens. My father and my mother became pastors of a church. But before that, I was raised in church. My younger years, my dad was not into church as much, but we always went with my grandmother. So I come from generations of pastors and evangelists. So I always tell my husband, there's people that before I was born, before my parents, my dad was born, that were praying for us, not even knowing us, so covering us. So I don't know any other life outside of church, and that's speaking literally my whole life growing up was church, and things of that sort. And back then I didn't understand it. Back then it could have been a frustration, but looking at it now as an adult and older, and as a mother, I'm thankful. I'm very grateful for my parents raising me in that, because I don't know anything else. And that's something I tell my husband all the time is, when hard times hit, I don't run to anything else but what I know. And that's the part that I love about my childhood, is that's all I know. And I pray to be able to give our children that.
Wow. That is amazing. I didn't come, I don't believe I came, from a background of like you guys, with a family that really went to church, that I could really say spoke life into me. But sometimes, when I hear, stories such as yours and being raised, in the church and knowing God, I think, man, Lord, I wish I could have just, met you sooner or brought you in my life sooner. You know what I'm saying? Because it's such a blessing. It's such a blessing to have the Lord as the center of our lives, and especially the kids, God already made the promise, raise your kids the right way. You know what I'm saying? And if they steer away, which I do have prodigal children, they'll come back.
Yeah.
Amen, sis.
Yeah.
I want to add one more thing. We come from completely 2 different backgrounds.
Very different.
So this is the unique thing about our relationship, because I wasn't the greatest kid. My dad jokes with me. He tells me, I say, Dad, Victoria grew up in a really good home. Like, her dad was next to Jesus kind of dad. And he looked at me and he laughed and he said, and it's funny because your dad's like the devil. And I think about that because he's locked up doing some serious time in Arizona. And so when I talk to him, he's giving his life gradually over to the Lord. And my mom as well, she always didn't have the greatest footing in life. So we grow up from completely two different backgrounds. I was incarcerated. I went through some things. She didn't get those experiences. But when she went to Bible college, she ran into people that were trying to get their lives together and had these kind of stories. And she tells me that, well, I don't think I would have ever married you had I not had that experience with knowing other people in Bible college who have that background. So it's kind of like God had to take her from a good raising home and kind of put her in the world a little bit to know a little bit about, hey, it's not like this everywhere. Your situation was, but it's not like this everywhere for everyone. So it really broadened her mind. And I think that's the very unique thing about our relationship, because we wouldn't be here together. If our common denominator wasn't God, we would not be here together, like sitting like this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amen. I was going to actually say that. I'm sorry. Go ahead, sis. What'd you say, Victoria?
Time, like growing up the way I grew up, our parents would always tell us, like, that's not your friend. And we were like, no, that's my friend. I go to school with them. And they're like, no, that's not your friend, because a friend is, and they would explain it. We were kind of like, oh, okay. Just because those people didn't go to church or they didn't associate. Like when I say I was raised in church, I mean, my life, Monday through Sunday, was church. You went to school, you went to prayer on Monday, you had youth night on Tuesday, you had midweek service on Wednesday, you had, my parents would go and do their home visits and classes or anything on Thursday. Friday nights was the only night my father always, specified, like, this is family time. This is where we're going to sit down at dinner and we're going to talk about our week. We're going to see how everybody's doing. And Saturdays usually were, let's go clean the church. We got to go shopping, get cleaning supplies for the church. We got like everything. My life was church, and we had Sunday morning service, Sunday night service. So I tell them all the time, like, the way I was raised, and a lot of times people say, oh, you guys were raised in a box, me and my sisters. And looking at it, was like, well, I didn't feel like it. But now when I think and I say my schedule was as a teenager, I'm like, oh, I guess we didn't do anything else, like that. That is what it is. But one of the biggest things that I learned in Bible college was my very first gathering. All of us sat down and said, oh, what brought you here? Where did you come from? And I've heard all these stories, people on drugs, people who are alcoholics, people, whose lives were being changed. And some of them saying they were pastors' kids.
At Bible college.
And I mean, they were there, some were there because their church sent them and so forth. But I remember a friend telling me, because I was almost towards the end of telling, my testimony. And I was like, I don't have a test. Like, I don't come from that. I was told of my Bible college experience was, do you know that you have the best testimony? And I was like, what do you mean? I could never, touch people the way you guys touch people with your testimonies. You're like, you never swayed away. Like, you never left. And that's the best part about your testimony. And I was like, oh my gosh, I never looked at it in that aspect of that. I don't have those experiences, but he's like, you still love, those type of people. You still, reach out, and you can, those growing up who are dealing with that as pastors' kids, like, you're that testimony that, it's not that bad, and you can touch lives. Maybe not the same way that the sister sitting over there or the brother sitting over there, but you, with your testimony, can touch a life that you stood solid. You knew what you believed, you knew your faith, and that's a testimony.
This is the jealous part. This is the jealousy part. They told her like this: you never gave the devil glory like we did. And that's like, well, as a Christian, you really think about that. Like, your whole life is set up to don't give the devil glory. And so the way I gave the devil glory growing up in my ignorance, she didn't give the devil that kind of glory. And so in a way, it's like us people that think we have these great testimonies, it's kind of sad because we gave the devil a lot of glory in that. But for those who don't seem like they have the biggest testimonies, I love those people, because they're the ones that really stood firm in the sense of they didn't give the devil glory. And so I think my wife kind of falls in that category, is that she didn't give the devil glory like maybe some other people, like people in the prison system who come to God, you know, did. So I think that's unique, and I like that. Now she knows she's not perfect. We know we're not perfect, but we understand that, you know, even if we weren't Christians, there's still that morality part. Like, how do we still be civil to our neighbors in our country and things like that? So, I mean, I think most people look at morality if they're not spiritual, and that's how they define their life. So from that standpoint, you know, I kind of think about things like that too.
Amen. I have a question though. So first I have a comment. I just want to say that it's a beautiful thing in the kingdom when we all can be so different and come from different backgrounds, but yet our foundation is solid, and that is on Christ Jesus. And I just think that's just a beautiful thing, that even though Sister Victoria, you know, she came from a solid home, and you know, the love of God was in your home from your parents, you know, and that's a beautiful thing. A lot of us did not have that, right? But then there are those of us like me who, I am from the street, I am hood, I've been on my own since I was 14. I didn't have that, so I had to learn a different way. But I love the fact that my way led me to your way. And, you know, we're solid on Christ. Like, it's just a beautiful thing how we all have our own stories. And yours is beautiful, sis, because you didn't leave God. Like, you legit stayed with him the whole entire time. And not a lot of people can do that, especially growing up. You know, you're in school and other kids are doing whatever. There's, you know, what's the word I'm trying to say when they try to coerce you into doing other things? What's it called? What is it? Peer pressure. There's peer pressure. There's all that stuff. So kudos to you, sis. But I wanted to talk about, I just wanted to ask a quick question. I know you guys do street ministry, right? Do you do street ministry, bro?
I do street ministry. I try to keep her away from street people sometimes.
That was going to be my question for you, sis. I'm like, how do you...
And you know what? We are complete opposite. Like, that's the thing. Like, when we first started dating, and we would go out, and he would take me into places that I was like, I've never been in this type of atmosphere. You know, I would panic, and I'm like this. I've never taken up, like, what was it, the subway or the train in downtown
public
Phoenix.
Transportation.
I had never taken that, and he made me get on it for a Diamondbacks game, and I was like, I'm not getting on that. Like, I will walk. And he's like, no. He's like, no. And I was like,
and she did walk. No, I'm kidding. No.
But I had never ever been in those type of situations around that type of like atmosphere, you know, druggies getting on and drunks. And it was not, I don't discriminate. I love them, you know, and I pray for them and everything, but it was hard because I'd never been in that. So I remember looking at him, and he's like, it is written all over your face that this is not like your atmosphere. Yeah. And I just told him, like, I've never been here. Like, we've done Feed the Homeless. Like, I've done that like all the time, you know, with my family through Bible college. I said, but to be in that moment, I was like, I tell him, I'm like, this isn't, I've never been here like on normal when we're not doing a ministry, when we're not doing this as a group. It was just me and him. And, you know, there's just people standing there, and I see people eyeing us. And I was like, I don't know. Like, I was so paranoid, and he was like, calm down. Like, it's not, I was like, okay. I was like, I come from a small town. I was like, so we didn't have public transportation. Everything was you walked or you drove, or, you know, so I was like, this is new to me. And so,
I was like, girl, you can keep your purse out. Like, you can keep it out. It's all good. These people are like humans too, you know?
I think you're like, you have got to be the most purest human I think I've ever even encountered, ever. Just based on the conversation.
People who meet me tell me that, like, the little things is like, just like with coworkers, when they say like, oh, we're just going to say this. And I'm like, okay, you say it. I'm not going to say it. Like, you know, it is not truthful. But as soon as they ask me, I'm like, okay, this is what happened. But like, you know, I end up just spilling it because I can't. Like, I tell them, like, it's hard. Like, I can't. Like, it eats me up. And like, just a small. I'll make the story short. We went camping Well, it was like by the lake, and we hadn't gotten married. We were just a few months away from getting married, and Ricky brings this gentleman. Did not tell me he was bringing this gentleman that he was mentoring. I bring my sister, I bring my younger cousins. It was all girls, and then Ricky and this gentleman. We get there late at night. This guy starts unloading our car, and me and my sister are like, do you know this guy? Like, I don't know him. Do you know him? Like, and my sister too was like, no, I don't know him. Like, so I was like, Ricky, who's that guy? He's like, oh, I'm mentoring him. We're okay. And I was like, okay. Like, I don't know. And then I have all my like family here, girls, younger girls, teenagers. And I'm like, okay. So later that night, a wild donkey had attacked our stuff. But all of us girls staying in like a 12-person tent, I heard noise and I was like, Ricky. And he wouldn't answer me. And so then I was like, my mind went to the worst. I'm like, this guy probably took him, killed him. Like I had like the worst thoughts in my mind.
Well, you should mention that he was an ex-felon.
He had just came out of prison.
So I told her that. So she had this preconceived idea, which I think most women should in some ways, you know what I mean? Because the world is a scary place. But at the same time, to me, I'm like, this is my normal. Like,
yeah, but I thought the worst the whole time, and I had to finish the rest of the day like on the lake with this guy, and it was eating me up inside that I thought this about him. And we get to driving back to the house to drop everything off, part ways, and in the car I'm like, can you call that guy? And he's like, what? Why? And I was like, I need to apologize. I thought really bad about him, and I thought he killed you, and I just feel really bad because I don't even know him. And he was like, he had to pull over laughing like hysterically. I'm like, it's not funny.
And on top of it, she didn't even know his name right. She was calling him a different name the whole time. I was like,
but I had felt that huge burden of like, oh my God, I thought he hurt Ricky, or that he might have tried to kill him, or that. And and even though this guy knew nothing about what I thought, I felt it. I felt that what I thought about him in that split second. I was like, that was wrong of me. Like, I didn't give him a benefit of the doubt. I didn't let him be him and show himself to me. I automatically judged based off of just the little bits that I knew. So it's little things like that people are like, most of those things go over people's head. Like that doesn't bother people. And I'm like, but it does me. Like I think it sits heavy until I clear it. And once I clear it, I'm like, okay, like I can sleep better. Like I'm better.
That's a reminder. Like, hey, girl, they don't stay in prison all their whole life. Like some of them do, but not all of them. Like, they go back to your neighborhood.
So it's things like that like when I meet people, they're like, oh, like that's like it's kind of childlike. And I'm like, I said, but that's just me. Like that. It's how my heart is conditioned. It's just the way I feel. Like if I cause an offense, I need to fix that offense. If I thought poorly, I need to correct that. And that's my mind, and that's just my way. And I know sometimes like me and him, that's where it's different. Where he's like, well, those things don't matter. And I'm like, maybe not to you, but to me, that's my conviction. And I need to go right with it, and I need to make it right. And that's where sometimes I tell him like, I may be a little bit more sensitive, but I just feel like that's just the way God made me, and how I have my walk with him. And when that conviction comes, I pay attention to it. I'm like, okay, what did I do? And sometimes I'd be like, I didn't think it was wrong, but realizing like, that someone else could see that difference. Someone else could take offense to that. And that's where I try to go and apologize and make it right.
The moral of the story is, ladies, quit watching 48 Hours so late at night. Like even when there's nobody in the house, turn it off. Like go watch Finding Nemo or something. You know what I mean?
That is partially why I thought the worst, because I even told him, I was like, he's like, you didn't even come out to check. And I was like, somebody had to live to tell the story.
Somebody had to live.
I was like, so, but that was where I told him, I was like, I felt really bad because my mind really went to like worst case. And this gentleman knew nothing about what I thought and everything, but it was heavy. It was so heavy on me that I was like, I have to make this right. Like, I have to make this right. And he's like, it's fine. He doesn't know. And I'm like, but I know. I was like, that's heavy for me. You tell him I'm sorry that I thought that. And he's like, okay. Like, he's like, some people don't. And I'm like, I'm sorry. It's just me. Like, in how I feel and how my convictions are.
Well, that's really the heart of God anyway. That's the heart of God. That is the heart of God. To whatever capacity we operate in our own conviction, right? To whatever capacity that looks like for the individual. And, you know, I'm the same way. I can't go to sleep if I feel like I've offended someone or if something's off. Like, I got to make that thing right. Now, I don't know about the just thinking part, like, because I think a lot about a lot of people, and I'm not finna go to everybody and be like, oh, I thought this about you. So hats off to you. God's still working on me, sis. That's real.
Yeah.
Amen. Now I almost got to unmute myself. It was so funny that, you know, you just said go watch Finding Nemo. I'm like, well, Dory's here. Hello. But if you guys don't mind me asking you, I mean, you can answer, you can choose not to. How did you two meet? How did that happen?
What, $40?
No. So we met on Christian Mingle, actually. I know. When we tell people, I'm like, I don't like telling this story, but at the same time, it's our testimony. So, because I'm like for $39.99, I paid to meet my husband.
She used a coupon. So that's why she got me. She would have paid full price. You know, she would have got the upgraded me.
My goodness, no. I had just moved back from going to Bible college because I had moved out towards Ohio is where I moved. I was there for a few years. I went to Bible college. I chose to stay there for my job and everything. But some things occurred there and I had no family there. I was literally out there by myself. And my family was all here, and I missed growing up. We were a tight family. Like, well, there was family gatherings all the time, and majority of my family go to church. You know, our life. We saw each other all the time, so I missed that. You know, and although I love the experience that I got, I was missing it, and so I chose to come back. When I came back, some things ended in a previous relationship. I really was not someone who went out and dated. I had 3 boyfriends my entire life at that time. And I came back and my mom was like, you're always home. Like, maybe you should try to meet someone. No one's ever going to see you if you don't go out. She was
giving her the boot kindly. She was like, Mija, it's time to go, you know, get out the nest.
And we go to church with people that I'm related to. So it was like, she's like, you'll never find anybody at church. Like, everyone's either married or so forth. So it just became a thing where I stayed just single for a while. And I just really honestly believe that was God's way of preparing my heart and readiness of focusing on getting ready to be a wife and to be a bonus mom to somebody. Because Ricky is a child from a previous marriage and
relationship.
Relationship. So I was it was my season to just be prepared. And my mom kept pressing, like, you know, no one's ever going to see you. All you do is go to work, home, church, work, home, church. She's like, you really don't get out. You know, you don't pay any attention to anybody. Anybody who tries to pay attention, you don't acknowledge it and you just brush it off. So I got on without telling anybody. I was like, I'm not going to tell my mom. I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to get on. We'll see. And I met him. And he was very persistent. I was like,
wait, hang on a second. I've never been on a dating site. So who swiped first?
Well, it wasn't a swipe. At that point, it was like you could view the profile, their religion, like what their beliefs, what they liked and don't like. And I had literally just been on for like a day. He sent me a message and I didn't open it for like 4 days because I really was like, I've never, you know, I didn't know what to expect. And I viewed his profile and I was like, oh, you know, okay. Like I honestly was not in a place where I was like, oh, I need a boyfriend or I want to date or I want to be with someone. Like I was just really in a content place for myself. I wasn't in need of that. So I finally opened the message. I believe it was a Wednesday night. You sent it on the Saturday. I opened it a Wednesday night and it was late at night. I had just gotten home from work and I thought, okay, I'll respond. And I responded and 2 minutes later he responded and I was like that wasn't supposed to happen. I was supposed to get it.
Girl, he was waiting. He was waiting for you. Girl, he was like this. He was checking every day. Like, did she open it?
So then he was like, let's exchange numbers. And I was like, no, like we could, message here for a little bit. And then finally we exchanged numbers. And he's like, you want to meet next week? And I was like, I don't know. Like,
yeah. I didn't, at the time, I wasn't good with computer, like messaging and all that stuff. That wasn't my style. I was kind of more old school. Like, hey, we talk on the phone. Let me hear you, because you might sound like a smoker and I might need to hang up quick or something, And I was like, I'm trying to see who this is. Like, I was skeptical going on Christian Mingle because, and matter of fact, Christian Mingle, you're going to have to, this free advertisement stuff going on, going to have to compensate. But, because you hear these stories, like, let's be real. You hear these stories of people getting online and people are fraud, catfish. I mean, they have a whole TV show about catfish. And so, and then you hear seasoned Christians, well, they'll get super religious and say, well, God doesn't work like that. God doesn't do this. God can't open this door. God can't work this way. And then so you hear all these things, and then you as a person have to make a decision. Well, how big is your God? Like, can God work through a donkey still? Can God work through the crying out rocks? Can, how does God communicate? So I tried to be open about it when I saw the email keep coming in. And I was at college in the time, and all the wonderful women were taken. And I was just like, I was trying my hardest to not get into a situation, because I had a girlfriend prior and she wasn't a godly girl. And I thought I could be Ricky missionary. But, when we think we can do that whole missionary thing, like, oh, she'll come to the Lord later. And you just know it ain't going to happen. Like, you just got to just get real with yourself. And so I was like, all right, let me cast my lot out over here on Christian Mingle. Let me try this out. And then so I met Victoria, and I was skeptical. So I was like, I'm going to test everything in the book, make sure that this ain't no catfish thing. And in some ways I did that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's okay. So he was very persistent. Like, he was like, no, let's meet, let's talk. And I was just like, well, first off, like, wait, like, let's just pump the brakes a little bit. He's like, well, I just want to make sure you're a real person, this and that. And I was like, okay, I guess. I was like, we can meet in a public place. We met for like an hour. We grabbed ice cream, and then we parted ways. Like, I just thought, okay, that was nice. It was nice to meet him. We'll see where it goes. And it was like 2 hours later. So what'd you think of me? Like it was just like very persistent. But let's get the other part. A month later, we're still getting to know each other this month. He ghosted me, completely fell off the face of the earth, ghosted me. And I even, like, when I tell you, like, I feel like if I caused an offense, I will try to fix it immediately. He had me texting like, hey, if I offended you, I apologize. If it's something I said, like, I'm sending all these things and I'm getting no response. And I finally just took it as, okay, he's just not interested. And at this point, my mom knew, I was talking to him, and she told me, she's like, well, what did you do? Was it something you might have said? And like, I was like, I don't know. Do you think, like, she had really made me start questioning, like, maybe I responded in a way he didn't feel was right. Maybe, and I was like, well, I asked for forgiveness. He didn't respond. And she's like, oh, well, just let it go, Mija, just leave it alone. And, it's just God's will. Things will happen. And for like, about a month, he ghosted me. Like, I quit messaging after a week, and I said, okay, like, no worries. And kept to myself, minded my own business. And out of the blue, he's like, you want to go to the lake? Sends me a message. And I'm like, he goes, hey, stranger, you want to go to the lake where, a couple of us are going? And I was like, I sent him the definition of stranger. I was like, I'm not a stranger. You're the one who ghosted me. And he's like, no, I deserve that. Like, I get it. He's like, and I respect that. And I was like, so no, I don't want to go to the lake. Like, after how you just ghosted me and like nothing. I was like, no, I'm not going to go to the lake with you. And he's like, okay, I respect that.
And a lot of it, like when we talked later too, when I realized that she was the real deal, my friend had convicted me, well, maybe it was God, I should say, and said, don't be playing with God's daughter. Like, she's the real deal. And that really took a toll on me. And so I was like, you know what? Am I ready for that? Am I, I've been praying for it for a long time, but am I really ready to date a woman on this caliber? And I was like, you know what? Does God answer prayers this way? And then you start to think, and then, talk to a couple of brothers, and they're like, we don't know if you're ready for it. And then I was like, And then so I had to be optimistic about that too. And I'm like, well, is it a possibility that God did this by mistake? And so, you're weighing all these options out, and you're just like, just give it some time. But me thinking about what I should do, I wasn't thinking about how she felt. And so that was my immaturity, so I'm over here trying to deal with my own battles, and like, should I pursue these college girls who are not on that caliber, or should I pursue this woman that is on that caliber? And so I'm battling, like, and then I'm kind of scared too at the same time, like, she's the real deal. And one of our things that we connected on Christian Mingle is because we liked the same Christian music group, and that's one of the things we had in common. And so we had talked about that, and that was probably one of the big things that really connected. But I did call her a stranger, and she did send me the definition, and she was like, and I'd say in my immaturity, that's where I was at the time, and that's how I did it. That's how I knew how to do it, and so it was one of those things that, like, maybe it's good for a young person to hear that, so.
And shortly after that, when he would tell me straightforward, like, I had told him from the beginning, I don't date. Like, I don't just, date this person, that person, meet that person, go. I don't. Like, I honestly was not raised that you don't do it that way. You wait on God, and if you feel led and things of that sort, then, you pursue it. But if not, then don't waste your time. Don't waste that valuable time in somebody who is not going to take you anywhere. So that was something that when we talked, I told him, I was like, I'm not here to just date. I'm not here to just see where this is going to go. Either you're ready to move forward in life, and you know what you want.
I'm going to grab my kid real quick. Sorry.
And so he said, no, I get that. Like, I understand that. He's like, and I'm going to show you that I'm serious this time. I'm not trying to play around with you, and so forth. And I had even started to begin to pray, and I had said, God, show me his fruits. Like, show me what it is about him that is for me. That is, if this is for me, show me his fruits. I don't want to hear his talk. I don't want to, hear what he says he has to offer. I want to see his fruits. I want to see his walk with you. I want to make sure he's the real thing. And after that, everything, just all the little things that started to happen. Something as simple as playing dominoes at the park. A guy comes over who just got done getting high off a can of spray paint and stuff. And Ricky starts ministering to him. And I'm sitting there like, this is a coincidence. Like, it's just because the park we went to, like, I was trying to try to, like, this wasn't the greatest park. This is why we ran into this. No big deal. I drive home and I'm like, God, I thank you for tonight. If it was of you, great. But can you send me another, showing me his fruits? I need just a confirmation on that confirmation. So just little things started to occur. The one biggest thing that I finally was like, this is it. This is who I'm going to marry. I don't know when. I don't know how it's going to conspire. I just know this was my final thing that I knew was of God to tell me this is who I was going to marry. And we had the previous job I had, we were putting on a big event at a hotel. And I was staying in the area he lived at, because we lived about an hour and a half from each other at that time. And so he said, you want to go hike the mountain before your day starts? And I said, yeah, let's go hike the mountain. We meet up outside in the parking lot of the hotel. We go to start hiking to leave, and we get to a light, and it's still dark out. It's 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. And this car, the light turns green. The car doesn't take off. We're sitting, and he's talking, and I'm looking at him like, the lights turned green twice and this car hasn't left. Why are we still sitting here? And he's like, has it? And I was like, oh, you haven't even noticed. And so he pulls up besides it, and I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, excuse me, hello. Like, and the girl slumped over. And I was like, I think this is a trick. Like, this is where that Dateline and 48 Hour stuff comes in that gets to you.
We're about to get robbed together.
I had told him, I looked around, I'm like, no, people do this stuff, or like someone's gonna come out and mug us, and this is just a setup, you know. It's dark out, and I'm staying in the car. I was like, nope, not happening. I ain't getting out the car.
Not
like,
today, Satan.
No. So he gets out, and this poor girl was wasted, drunk, sitting there, the loud radio talk show thing on, like just wasted. He's trying to put her car in park so she doesn't take off into an intersection that had cars, because all her windows are down. He reaches in, he puts her car in park, and I was like, what are you doing? You just put your fingerprints on things? Like, I was so like, oh, like, he's like, no, it's fine. And finally he gets her up, and, you know, we're kind of, he's hitting the side of her car, like, excuse me, miss, ma'am, excuse me. She gets up, and he's like, you know, you're a little drunk, you can't be driving. She just gets out and goes and sits on the curb. And I was like, what are you going to do? I was like, do you just want me to call the cops, you know, have them come take care of it? And he's like, no, just wait. He's like, I'm going to take her car around, okay, and park it. Just follow me. And I was like, what? Like, you're not going to do this. He's like, no, it's fine. It's okay. And I was like, okay. Like, so he went and parked it, and he's telling her, do you have somebody you can call, and this and that. So the mom gets on the phone, and he's like, she's in my car. The car she's in is my car. I can't come get her. And so he's like, okay. And he comes back to me. He's like, I'm going to drive her home. Just follow me. And I was like, okay. Like, completely confused. He's like, I'm going to have her sit in the back seat, put her, you know, have her put her seatbelt on. He's like, you just, you know, follow behind me. The mom gave me the address. I'm going to put in the GPS. We're going to go. And this girl did not live like around the corner. We had to get on 3 major freeways to get her home. I was like, there was no way she was going to make it home. So we get to her house, we pull up, and the mom and sister come out, and the first thing they start doing is accusing them of possibly taking her purse. And I was like, I was so offended. So I was like, we just drove from like 30 minutes and got on 3 big freeways to get here. And he's like, no, I didn't touch nothing. Everything's in the car. They looked, they're like, okay, everything's there. Thanks. And just leave. And we were like, I was very offended at the fact that we had like just did this big thing, and that was their response to us, especially to him. I was like fearful of what the whole situation, what could become of it. And so we get in the car, we go to start hiking, and the whole time that was like my thing, that I was like, okay, God, I don't know when, I don't know, you know, when I'll marry him, but I know he's it. Like, I know this is it. And I trust and I believe that what I've asked, you've been faithful, and you answered and you showed me. I was like, so whatever happens along the road happens. I just know this is it. I didn't tell him that, of course, right away. Like, I left.
It was all in our eyes.
And I gotta say that, honestly, I gotta say that you guys are like literally my newest favorite couple. I gotta say that, okay? You guys are hilarious. And then the way that Ricky just stays looking at you as you talk, I'm like, I have never seen a brother look at his wife the way that he looks at you. I'm like, come on now. And I admire everything that you guys are saying. But sis, don't beat yourself about that story, you know, because technically, kind of, that's exactly how my husband and I met.
Awesome.
Yeah. And it was my sister's fault. Let me add that, okay? Because I had no intentions of ever dating anybody or even getting married. You know, when I, you know, my health isn't the greatest. So my sister knew him and one of their friends. And so she decided that she was going to install POF. You guys familiar with POF?
It's another dating
site. A fish or something like that?
Yeah.
Girl, I could not even do it one day. I couldn't do it one day. I had like 100 messages. And the day that I was actually going to delete the app because I couldn't do it, that's when I met my husband. And I'm like, hey, just letting you know, I'm out of here. So he asked me, you know, for my number. And I was like, I was kind of skeptical because I was like, no, not doing it. But look at 4 years later, you know, this March, and we've been married 4 years, you know, so all God. Yeah. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're good, because I know we're on time, but yeah, I mean, the moral of the story, we end up getting together, and we learn how to mesh together in this Christian walk. And you know. And I mean, we still are learning how to.
It's not perfect,
yeah.
and it is
Every
hard,
day.
you know, because when you're raised, like I was raised one way, this is mine, and he's raised one way in his mindset. It doesn't change overnight, you know. Just the same way we transitioned into that in our growth as we grew up. It sometimes it's hard to do that, but at the same time, sometimes it's like, you know what, let's just step back, let's breathe, let's stop and realize like you have neither one of us is right or wrong. We just need to really just come together in it and discuss it and communicate through it. You know, it doesn't mean I'm wrong, you're wrong, I'm right, you're right. Like it's just honestly is a matter of respecting each other in our voice and in communication.
And in the back of my mind, every time she's wrong, I go back to her profile and I'm like, she never listed that. She never said that on their profile. So you online viewers, you know what I mean?
You guys are so funny.
Yeah.
You know, I just love, you know, your guys' story. It has so much, you know, in it, you know, and I can say, you know, I've never really met a couple that, you know, whose story is very similar to mine. You guys are actually the first couple, you know, except for the me being, you know, a pastor's daughter, that wasn't happening, and it was just,
and the
just
drunk
not
lady and
you know?
the drunk lady. Yeah. I was really moved. I was compassionate towards her because at first, I'm not gonna lie, you know, I reached into the car and I was a little bit more sensitive to spiritual battles in the sense of demons and God. And I was like, man, I don't want this girl to turn her head around like The Exorcist and start getting all crazy with it. I was like, I'm not ready for all that right now. But, you know, she was definitely under the influence, and I was just, she could have killed somebody. So shout out to my brother Mario, because he was in back of my mind like, hey man, this is how you would handle that kind of situation. And so, you know, in back of my mind, I was like, you know, this has to be priority, because this could be somebody, this could be a DUI gone really bad on the freeway. So
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
But she kept bringing all the fish, and I did.
A month later, I asked him, because I'm telling you, when I asked God to show me his fruits, it was like every time we met up, it was another thing and another thing. And I just kept saying, okay, I just need confirmation on the last confirmation. It's just one more confirmation. You know, because it was, I didn't think I was going, like I said, I wasn't in a place where I was like, I want to be married. I want to start a family. I wasn't there. I honestly, truly was in a place where I was just content with my life. I was content with where I was in life in general. And that was something that I was very clear to him at the beginning of things was, I'm happy where I'm at. Like, I don't need any stress. I don't need any drama. Like, I have a job, I have a career, you know, I'm in a place that I'm in a healthy place. Like, I don't want to go backwards. I don't want to, you know, cause chaos for myself. And so when we talked about a month after that incident with the drunk girl, I asked him, I said, hey, do those situations happen a lot? Like, and he's like, no, craziest thing. It's just been like the last few months. All this stuff's just been happening. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, and I didn't say anything to him until like months later. I was like, I have something to tell you. And it was after he'd already proposed, and after he already talked to me about wanting to get married and everything. I was like, I have something to tell you. And he's like, what? And I was like, so I tell him, and he was like, so you're the one just sending all these fish, huh? Just one after another. Yeah. And I told him, I'm like, I said, I just needed to know, like, I wanted to see your heart. I didn't want to hear it. I wanted to see it. And that was something that I believed God would show me, because I asked specifically. And that was, I told him, I said that to me, you know, I felt favored on God in that, you know, I came to him and he answered. And that's the biggest thing I tell Ricky. I'm like, when people tell me like, oh, you're so childish, I always tell them, like, I truly believe that God will give me the desires of my heart. I don't ever play the, like, I
can't testify that. Yeah.
I mean, down to the littlest things, you know, that I want. I'll tell him, it's okay. I'm just gonna wait on God, because he knows the desires of my heart.
How we got our home, how all kinds of stuff. But I mean, not to get on rabbit trails, but I've seen that favor. So I've always said that, you know, if God don't do it for me, he'll do it for her. And and I really mean that. I'm like, you know what, you know, because sometimes I'm a little aggressive as a guy in certain things, and I'm like, you know what, No, and sometimes I can be stubborn and prideful like any other guy. You know, let me put my tool belt on and, you know, let me go handle the business this way or that way. And when I know that I do it wrong, I'm like, well, if God don't strike me down, it's because of her. She sent me the around type of thing. But no, that's just being honest and truthful. You know, so God does kind of balance us out a lot in those areas. But we do have two completely set of styles in ministry. And so it's interesting because maybe there's a couple on here, or maybe there's someone on here that needs to hear this, but you know, I am hands-on street evangelism and stuff like that. Sometimes, and we're in a different season right now because we have little ones, so we can't just get up and just go take the little ones to go do street evangelism and stuff like that. We can, but I mean, you know, it's just we're in a different season when it comes to our kids and how we talk to people and things like that. So a lot of the stuff that I do, it's because she's at home and able to help take care of the kids. And so even though it gets stressful sometimes, my wife is my backbone for taking care of the kids. So we try to balance that out, but it gets frustrating. It's like, you know what, we have these ministries and we try to make it all work together. But I don't expect my wife to go out there and do what I do because I know she's not gifted in that area. And she doesn't expect me to have the motherly love that she has when it comes to the kids, because I'm not gifted I'm not a woman in that motherly affection stuff. I'm a dad, so my love is different. So our learning how to do ministry together as a couple is just very important. And understanding each other's gifts. Like, hey, you're good at this, you know, you might talk to the landlord better than I do. So, you know, no, I'm kidding. We don't have that issue, but it's true though.
Yeah. Like being raised in church, I tell them, I was like, you know, I get so excited, just something simple as cleaning the church or setting it up for an event or things that people don't see me do. You know, I said, I enjoy those things because I don't try to, you know, I don't like being out there. I don't like people seeing, you know, what work I did or so forth, because I sound like that's where our hearts are in different places, where he loves getting out there. He loves, you know, I tell him, like, you shout it from the mountaintop, and I'm the person who wants to help people get to the mountaintop, you know, and just be the silence in it. And that's where I say that we, in a sense, it balances out majority of the time, but sometimes it can be a frustration, you know. And I tell them all the time, you know, being in the back side of it, like I always tell them, like, I always want perfection. Like when we have to set up for something, or, you know, I always want everything to be in order and in place, because I want people to enjoy themselves, and I want people to, you know, not to ever think negative about an event or anything. And down to like basic things of getting an ice chest full of water, you know, at the park, things like that, getting, you know, little snacks for them and stuff like that. Like I was something like that's what I love to do. I love to plan those things where people don't see the work I put into it, but God knows my heart and where I put the work in.
My husband is like you. My husband is like you because he's more of the back scene type of guy. And we're called, you know, to be helpers of one another, right? So whatever works for you to help him, you know, and vice versa, that's how you guys are able to, you know, work it out in one, you know. And it's so important. Like what you guys are speaking on is so important, because I don't think a lot of, you know, people who are married or whatever, you know, really know how to balance ministry. You know, my husband and I, we are gospel music producers as well as singers, rappers, and songwriters, right? So our ministry is music ministry. And then, of course, Hebrews ministry. But, you know, he's been talking for a while now about, you know, pulling back, you know, from the music ministry because he wants to be more of the background type of guy. While me and a brother who is a part of J316, you know, would be more of the front people. You know what I'm saying? But it's the understanding and patience and recognizing that, you know what, we're diverse, right? You know, we're diverse and we all have different likes and characters and stuff like that. And if we're going to be one in Christ, how are we going to work it out? You know, when one is being pulled this way and called to do this, and then another one's being pulled to do this. And I think that when you have God in the center and you just allow God to work that thing out, he'll do it. You know what I'm saying? Which is amazing, you know, how you guys are balancing everything out, which is my next question. How did your book, Minutes with God, come about? How did that, you know, because obviously God was working from your guys' relationship and just building from glory to glory, you know, and then we're seeing, you know, the book come out.
Yeah. So, I think that's a great point, Sister Rose. We're all unique. I do have a public ministry. She has she feels more intimate with God by doing behind the scenes. I feel more of a responsibility that, you know, because I tell, like, my convictions are God didn't save me from 25 years for nothing. And so I carry a conviction in me that I could be in prison still, but remember my prayer. If I honor anything else, I honor what my prayer was to God in prison. You know, so I told him, I said, look, I'm going to serve you hard. So I owe him, I think, another 8 years to do my 25-year sentence. Sorry, no, I'm kidding. But seriously though, I go with the conviction is that, and I tell her, and I don't expect her to understand that as how I understand it. I don't expect her to understand the pit that I come from. But sometimes I get clouded and I think she knows my conviction as I know my convictions. And I think couples have to be careful with that, is that your spouse isn't going to know your convictions the way you know your convictions. I mean, there's clues and there's hints and there's ideas, but at the end of the day, what you feel is what you feel. And for me, when it comes to evangelism and when it comes to doing the most, really, like, in just getting out there and making sure that the name is being proclaimed, you know, I push hard. So I know that when I got out of prison, I joined Alongside Ministries, graduated from there, became a youth director / pastor for 5 years for the Salvation Army. We had like different areas. So mine was like Whitman, Waddell, Sun City, Peoria, El Mirage, this and that. So I had a big community that I helped oversee. And so I began to grow in my language and Christian ethics, if that makes any sense. Christian, corporate Christianity is what I should say. Learn how to flow in corporate Christianity. And so as I grew in that area and learned to do ministry where God had me at the time, I realized that I would do a lot of social media posts. That was my thing. I really liked to write a lot on social media. I liked to blog. And I'm someone who basically learned how to read a Bible inside of a jail cell. And so I'm over here like, okay, this makes sense. I like how this flows, this and that. And so I started off that way, and then people would come and, you know, your gifts make room for you. And people come and they see and they're like, hey, listen, you have something here. And, you know, all the old people are, you know, they're not afraid to give you encouragement. Well, there's a lot of old people in the church that were like, hey, you know, God's doing something. And I was like, okay. And it always stuck in back in my mind. So, but when I would write, I would feel power. I would feel inspiration. And I didn't realize that that's how God wrote through people in the Bible, that he wrote through the inspiration of people in the Bible. That's how he moved, according to 1 Timothy or 2 Timothy. I forget what scripture it is. But so inspiration is something that I always took as a sign from God. If God gave me inspiration, then I knew that he was telling me to participate in something. So if God gives you inspiration, it's because he's calling you to participate. And so for me, I'm like, you're calling me to participate in literature. And so I started to participate in literature. While I got married, I moved to another city, and I realized that I'm no longer in youth ministry. The kids are growing up, they're going to college, this and that. And so I'm like, I'm going to write a book. And we weren't on the same page at the time with writing the book. But again, my convictions were my convictions. And I was like, I need to do this. And so I wrote it, and then it started running. Then we went to the second book, and then it started to turn into a social media outlet. And it started to go one thing for another, and then it went to street ministry, and then people just throughout the state started getting these books with inside prison, outside of prison, and I was like, okay, God's doing something with this. And so He's allowed me to kind of take this book and use it as a fishing bait, and to kind of just, that was my platform after youth ministry. And so that's where I got it. But the conviction to say Minutes with God was because I realized how quickly our world is decaying. Is like, I felt my biggest victories happened in prison because I had more time with God. And I noticed that when I had more time with God, I had more peace. And I was like, if that formula was true for the person in the pit, then it has to be true for the person on the streets. And so I noticed that in the pit, that I would find encouragement and nourishment from God by spending that alone time with Him. It wasn't in necessarily evangelizing or anything like that, but I knew that it was, spending time with Him one-on-one. And so that's where Minutes with God was birthed. Is like, okay, I want to help people rethink that they need to spend time with God. Take a couple of minutes, because we live in the Western world. We're too busy for God. Like, we're too busy for each other. I'll see my coworkers more than I see my wife, at times, and especially for the people that are in management, and especially for the people that are driving an hour to work and an hour back. It's like, you only have like 5 hours with your kids. If you're working a 9 to 5, you come home, that's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. If you're going to bed by 10 o'clock, that's 5 hours. That's leftover energy with your family and what you're giving your kids. And so I really felt that we would have more of a cured country if we just stopped and spent more time with God. And, because everything evolves around God. God is central. God is the focus. God is the healer. And if it evolves around how to build better habits for your life, again, that goes back to God. God's going to teach you how to build better habits. If you're looking at modification behavior, again, it goes back to God. God's going to teach you. Well, as a matter of fact, God's going to make you new, and God's going to create a new heart in you. And then, through that new heart, you're going to push towards the things of God and gravitate towards the things of God. So I always feel like you put God first, everything else is going to fall into place. And if someone else isn't falling into place with that, it's because they have an issue with God. It's because they have a growing problem with God. It's not because you have a growing problem. Like, and I have to, that's something I have to swallow too. Like, that's a pill that I have to swallow. Even though I wrote this book and there's great wisdom in it and all these things, it's something I have to take for myself too, because I don't ever want people to think. And there was a season where I thought that I knew it all. Like, there was a season in my life where I'm like, I got all this wisdom, and and I knew I had a gift, but what's my gift if my heart's not right? If my heart's full of pride and it's like, I got all these credentials, I got all these, these accolades, people can clap, I can come into a room, I can give a great speech, but my silver tongue isn't going to get anybody to heaven. It's going to be the Lord Jesus. And so for a season, I used to just share my testimony, because I was like, man, I got this powerful testimony, and Christians hype each other up. They're like, man, bro, you were saved from 25 years to life at 16. You were facing first-degree murder, this and that, and you need to share that testimony. But as I grew up in the Lord, I was like, you know what? There's a testimony that I need to share, but it's not mine, it's his. And so I gravitated away from sharing my testimony and said, you know what? Let me preach about him. So now I go in and I use my testimony as this, like this Marine operation. Like I'll pull it out when necessary. Like if I'm talking to a bunch of thugs or a bunch of people coming out of prison, you know, I normally have to convince people that I've been to prison. Seriously. Like I have to, that's how you know, God's made you a different person, is when you have to convince people that, like, no, bro, I was there. Like, bro, get out of here with that. You weren't.
Can I
there.
get an amen on that, yo? That's real. That is so real. The transformation of God. When you've been transformed, you don't come out looking the same way or acting the same way. That is truly God's transformation on someone's life. Like legit. I love what you just said, bro. Like legit.
The glow, like you ever hear the Christian term, the glow, like, oh, I see the glow of God on you and the aura, and, you know, you feel the presence of God in somebody. You know, I think for me personally, you know, we got to be careful. Like everybody's growing at a different pace. And the older I get, I'm like, you know what? Life is too short to be trying to argue with this person about who God is. It's like, you know what, let me just say, this is who I know who God is to be. Like, this is what he's done for me, and that's the end of the story. Like, God's real, and this is how I know God is real. But as I get older, I'm like, a lot of things start to shed off of me. That, like, I'm more casual about things, I'm more laid back about things, and I'm, you know, a lot of things don't take priority like they used to. Yeah, but yeah, that's it. Yeah. You want to say anything?
I was going to say, like, through this book writing, though, we also were going through a season. Our babies are 2 and 1. When I first found out I was pregnant with my 2-year-old, I found out I actually had some medical issues that made everything a risk. And we weren't expecting our 1-year-old. And shortly when I got cleared, I found out I was pregnant again 3 months later after having my 2-year-old. So it was really a season of time, because that pregnancy was a lot rougher than the first pregnancy, to the point there was hospital stays midway through that pregnancy. They thought I was going to deliver sooner. She wasn't growing fat, you know, at the weight she should have been. It was really a season. And I think this was his way of writing the book, was to get through that season and spending that time doing that. Cause it was a lot, you know, when we both were working, I was still trying to work and maintain being a mom, a full-time employee, and going through a pregnancy that was just rough. You know, it took a lot in our household. And I think this was his way of taking his time and his minutes with God, literally, and sitting down and just, you know, typing away, writing this book. And putting his heart into it during that season that our household was going through. You know, and a lot of people don't realize that that's the time frame that this book was written, was a time that, you know, things just felt very chaotic for us between all of those, you know, one risk pregnancy after another, and so many things occurring in that time frame, that I think this was his way, and how God used him to get through that season and to stay focused.
Yeah.
And I was going to say that too. Usually when the Lord prompts us to do something or gives us a word, it ends up being for us first, to either encourage, to correct, to learn, to grow, you know, whatever the case is, whatever the reason he has for us. It's in those moments that I feel that it's usually for us first, you know, to bring forth to the kingdom. So I have not read the book yet. Can you tell us where we can get that? Can you tell us where we can get Minutes with God?
Yeah, it's on all platforms right now. This is the book, and again, it says Minutes with God, and inside of it's a 45-day devotional. So you can just pick a page and you can start reading, and that's what I like about